For people to make such a definitive claim when they haven't played the game, I think is just an ignorant thing to do, and it's you just blindly following someone's opinion.
Oof. Did you just call people ignorant? You're ignorant. If you don't like IGN's review, you're ignorant. Oh my God, this is going to be a gold mine. You then go on to talk about how essentially IGN is pointless. Congratulations. One of the dumbest sentences by a game journo ever. What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from The Quartering, and I think I've got 2, maybe 3 videos for you today, probably just 2. Pokemon Sword and Shield dropped today amongst one of the most divided fan bases I've seen. And look, Pokemon diehard fans, you have every right to enjoy the game. You have every right to just enjoy good things. And I think in my first video, I was probably, how do I say, a little too harsh. I stand by talking about the criticisms that were there, but I don't think I did a fair enough job representing the side of people who it didn't affect, or they didn't care, or they had their own justifications why it didn't matter. But it's been interesting watching the games industry react to this. It's like they review this game and they're like, Pokemon exists, 10 out of 10. The reviews are insanely high, and this is a problem. Why? Because it leads to complacency within developers, and the reviews for Pokemon Sword and Shield don't look great from the consumer side, but the corporate side seems perfectly fine. It's an interesting dynamic. And also we see Japan pre-orders down significantly, and IGN whining about receiving criticism for giving the game such a high score. I mean, I never thought I would see a world where Pokemon fans were showing me the IGN review in an attempt to own me and saying, it's a perfect game. Look, IGN gave it a 9. Eat that. What? IGN giving... That's like saying a movie is great because Rotten Tomatoes gave it a good score. Look, you can enjoy the things that you like, and I bet that the overwhelming majority of people are going to love this Pokemon game. That doesn't mean it's perfect, and that doesn't mean that you can't levy some criticism towards it. Look, this channel just isn't about heaping praise on top of video games. The corporate media exists for that. But let's take a look at how IGN's reacted to a bit of pushback. To give you a bit of context, the IGN crew, in particular one reviewer, gave Pokemon Sword and Shield a 9.3, which is very high. Is it a 9.3 game? Based on what I've seen, it's unlikely. Does it mean it's a 5 or a 4 or a 3 game like what appears on Metacritic right now? Probably not. And in their initial review of the game, the internet reacted very well with many tens of thousands of dislikes. And I guess I'm not surprised. It's not unusual to see the IGN crew review a game and get more dislikes than likes. But let's take a look at that. So here's their initial review, basically addressing no complaints at all with the game, giving it a glowing review to 670,000 people, 20,000 upvotes, 26,000 downvotes. This game is divisive. Again, I want to start off by reminding people, if you enjoy it, that's what matters, above all else. But nonetheless, Pokemon exists here. Reviewers, wow, 10 out of 10. After 23 years, the biggest franchise in the world, some people are celebrating free camera movement. Another day, another IGN review with more dislikes than likes. When your friend has never played Pokemon before. Even though this reviewer says, and I believe her, that she has played them all. They then retreated to this small podcast channel, Nintendo Voice Chat, to, in my opinion, dismiss many legitimate criticisms of the game by calling it gaslighting. And that's a little disingenuous, but I'm not surprised, given IGN are paid shills.
Like, animations are being recycled, and that means that there should be more Pokemon included, and that the graphics are bad, and so why wasn't it on the 3DS? And like, there's all this other stuff wrapped up in it. And I just wonder, like, this sort of backlash, do you think it's just a snowball effect, or are these qualms having played it, something that you also identify as like, oh yeah, that could have been better, or like.
I do really think a lot of it was snowball effect. Honestly, there are things in the game that could be better, but you can say that about, I think, every game.
Right.
So we can already kind of see the reviewer here at IGN is obviously a super fan of the franchise. I do think it's a difficult task to get your reviewers. You don't want somebody who just, let's say, is awful at fighting games, reviewing a fighting game, because you're going to get a review that's overly negative due to their own bias. Here you have what is clearly a Pokemon super fan who is willing to discredit any and all criticism as not a big deal, and you don't want that either. I guess unless you're taking money from Game Freak.
There are some flaws in the game that ultimately didn't affect my experience, and I feel like the way they're being presented online are largely out of context or so rare that I didn't even notice it until someone pointed it out.
This reviewer expects us to believe that she had no idea that they removed hundreds of Pokemon from the national dex, or that, I don't know, she couldn't be bothered to look into whether or not they reused models, or I don't know, she couldn't be bothered to look into the game deleting all previous save files, which is a known issue in the game. I suppose when you review a game, you don't want to spend all day looking at other people's opinions, but I think it's reasonable to address some of the biggest issues online and not dismiss them as a snowball effect or hearsay or, well, it didn't happen to me, so it must not have happened.
And I had beaten the game by that point. I made sure to kind of like stay away from all of the leaks and all of the controversies and all of the complaints until after I was done the game and after I had written my first draft.
Right.
And it got to the point where like I read this Reddit thread and I was texting Jen and I was like, am I being gaslit? Like, am I crazy? Like, I didn't experience.
No.
Yeah.
Again, am I to believe that 2 reviewers from IGN didn't find any validity to the thousands of comments and threads? Like, everybody else out there is just making up these issues. None of it happened. There are verifiable problems with the game, and to dismiss it all as, well, I guess I was being gaslit, makes us see straight through you. You're not reviewing the game for your customers. You're reviewing it for Game Freak. You are an important marketing arm for them, and I'm sure that there are monies changing hands at some point here. There isn't a coincidence that there's 26,000 downvotes on your review. It's not just people making up problems, and I don't think that you have to address every little thing, but to dismiss it all as they're just bologna sausage is ridiculous.
And I was like, I didn't experience any of these things that these people are complaining about.
I would say a lot of like, I haven't seen too many of like the intensive, like weirdly in-depth threads on information that was like stolen and leaked and cropped and re-uploaded and like made fuzzy and put on like Imgur and just all this like random stuff.
That's right. Play the X-Files theme now. It's all a conspiracy. Everybody's just pumping out fake news to smear the Pokemon Sword and Shield game. This is why nobody takes video game reviews seriously. This is why people laugh at IGN. You're literally going to sit up there and say, they were made blurry. Think of the words that she used, by the way. That the data was stolen or that it was leaks. She's using the fact that data miners found this out to discredit anything they found. Now, it's entirely up to the individual, in this case, these reviewers, to say whether or not it matters, but to take verifiable evidence and try to put the specter of doubt around it because it was a leak is ridiculous. These are the same people that would happily retweet all these whistleblowers, and they'll back the leaks that might go after Orange Man, I imagine, but not in video games, not with the people that pay their checks.
I'm going to base my opinion on Pokemon Sword and Shield based on this random Reddit thread. I think is just like a terrible decision to make. Regardless, I would say that for any game.
That's right. You would be much better just listening to IGN. When they tell you to buy something, just buy it. Or better yet, just buy whatever games come out, shut up about it, consume the product, and get excited for the next product. Thanks for the in-depth reporting, IGN.
I would even go as far as to say, like, I definitely consume reviews and I like checking out reviews sometimes before or after a game. But in general, like, it's fine if it might shift your opinion slightly or give you maybe a different feeling before going into a game, because I think that's natural. We all that's why we do previews, right? We see things and we say, oh, you know what? I'm looking forward to it, but like this thing gives me concern, or now that I've seen this, I'm not so sure. But for people to make such a definitive claim when they haven't played the game, I think is just an ignorant thing to do. And
Oof. Did you just call people ignorant? You're ignorant. If you don't like IGN's review, you're ignorant. Oh my God, this is going to be a gold mine. You then go on to talk about how essentially IGN is pointless. Congratulations. One of the dumbest sentences by a game journal ever.
you just blindly following someone's opinion. And I don't think you should do that in any context, but especially when it's just random like clips and pieces that you don't really know how legitimate they are or not. Like me and Casey looking at those things can point out, oh, this seems like this part is kind of accurate, or I experienced this, but I didn't experience this other thing. So like without being able to parse that information, you're literally just believing some random thing someone tells you.
Yikes. This just smacks of the whole email leaks back a few years ago where CNN was like, you can't read these. That's against the law. You have to let us read it and tell you what they mean because trust us. That's essentially what this person's saying. Don't trust what your fellow gamers have said on Reddit and YouTube or found through data mining. Listen to IGN. We're here to help you. You can trust us.
And I don't think that's ever a good idea to do in life, and which also applies to video games. So yeah, the TLDR of that is don't just blindly believe things, because that's how terrible things happen in the world. But to their point, I think there are some like animation issues in certain capacities, and we can talk briefly about that next, what me and Casey think Pokemon Sword and Shield could have done better and what we'd want to see from future games. But yeah, holistically, it's just been like a random cesspool of misinformation. And I think just play the game if you want to play the game. If like for some reason you've seen this and have decided that because of this you're not playing the game, that's on you. But to kind of propagate it as if, hey, I have like this inside scoop of information when you like most certainly do not, is just ignorant. I don't have another word for it.
Yeah.
It's ironic that you can't spell ignorant without IGN, as this reporter continues to dig herself a hole, calling anybody who believes what is essentially anybody but IGN ignorant. And that if you don't buy their game, that's on you, as if you making a conscious decision based on data that is not just fake. There's significant data that has been proven, and there's also been leaks that have been disproven. But if you make your decision without listening to IGN, you're ignorant, and that's on you.
And one of the biggest criticisms I'm getting about my review is like, oh, you didn't talk about any of the problems, the glaring problems that make this game broken. And it's like, I didn't talk about any glaring problems because there aren't any glaring problems.
Right. So
You heard it here first. IGN reports Pokemon Sword and Shield 10 out of 10, devoid of any reasonable problems. Now, I would think that if a reviewer, let's say I was on a PC, for example, and I didn't have any issues with my version of Windows and perhaps the driver for my NVIDIA card, right? But during my review, there are thousands of people having problems. Do I ignore that because I didn't have a problem, or do I go off the actual evidence of many other people having a problem? Here's how I would report it. Look, here's my setup. I didn't have any of these issues, but clearly where there's smoke, there's fire, and there's been a lot of other technical issues. And I would argue that that should lower your score. The fact that you didn't experience any of these problems, well, I can tell one problem for a fact that you experienced, and that was the cut of the national decks. Now, you might argue that this isn't a, quote, big deal to a lot of people, but I still think that should have, if I was being honest, some impact on the score overall.
I think it's a thing is like
it's
when
not
you're
your job to address conspiracy theories online in a review. Like, it's supposed to be your opinion, your critical analysis of the text that you played. That shouldn't have anything to do with what some random person data mined and took from that's not related to the game.
Yeah, data mined from the game. Actual data is a conspiracy theory. Holy moly. I don't even have to look at these people's Twitters to know exactly what I'm going to find. You've got to be kidding me. The host of the show is even trying to reel this lady back in. You know, maybe stop attacking fans. When you put out a review, not everyone's going to like it. When I waded out into the murky waters of the Pokemon Sword and Shield, Game Freak Lied World, many hundreds of dislikes on that video. That's okay. Maybe I got some things wrong. I certainly presented it in probably too aggressive of a manner, but that doesn't discount those people's opinions. I can't just say, you're wrong, I'm right. It must be a conspiracy theory. Thanks for this laugher of a video on Friday, IGN. Your meltdown has been amazing to watch. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you again real soon.